look like a turkey's neck, but sort of pulsing. You're listening to the Beat Motel podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist, butty scrutux, angry flap, and foot biscuits. And we don't often bleep those words out, apart from because we're not complete animals. But if you understand that and you like music, then listen on. Hey, as that nice man just said, this is Beat Motel, and my name is Andrew Culture, and I am here with Ollie again. Hello, Ollie.
Hi, mate. Do you want to say the line?
What was the line?
Oh,
Back
come
by
on.
Ollie Demand.
You know, I'm actually going to say today I feel more like an understudy, rather than being backed by Beat Demand. I feel like, not to give away the magic of podcasting, but I was brought in at the 11th hour, so I'm not sure it's Beat Demand.
I did. Well, I beat a demanding path to your door and said, Ollie, help, I need a guest. And you went, whatever.
Very good.
Right, let's dive in with your riff of the week. Oh, that sounds almost like it could be linked to our theme this week, which I'm not going to reveal, but tell us who that was.
That was Bedhead with a cover of Golden Brown. I think it was originally by the Stranglers. Am I right in saying that?
It certainly was. One day we're going to do an episode, songs about smack, and that will be on it, along with Perfect Day by Lou Reed, but that's for another time. That's a brave cover, isn't it?
Do you know, sometimes I think anyone who's listening who perhaps makes music will have encountered this before. I sometimes wonder if bands like this are noodling around trying to write their own music and they stumble upon a riff and someone looks at them and goes, hey, that's just Golden Brown. So what are you going to do with it? And then the band just agrees, should we knock a cover out? It's
funny. I saw a clip earlier. I'm really odd around Blur, right? Because I was obsessed with them when I was a teenager, but I think Damon Albarn, I'm never sure if he's a twat or not. And I bet that'll be one of the clips that gets made, because he occasionally seems really nice. And I saw a clip earlier where he was claiming to intimate that he wrote some of the riffs for the Elastica album, which is entirely possible because he was going out with Justine Friedman at the time. But he said something interesting. He said, oh, when such and such Blur song, but song 2, he said song 2 started off as like a lounge act track, and we were jamming it in the studio, and Graham Coxon couldn't be asked with it, so he just made it like a heavy thing. And the person interviewing said, well, could you prove that? And he said, yeah, I keep demos all the way from my first inception all the way through to the final product. He said, because there'll always be somebody who accuses you of stealing their songs. So as a safety net, as an insurance policy, he still keeps like the first rough demo. And I thought, that sounds smart. That does sound fairly smart.
I also agree that Damon Albarn sits somewhere between sort of like COD philosopher and actual genuine poet, because I think he's produced some incredible music, and you and Jago have spoken about it in the past. They've produced 13, which I agree with Dave Jago. I think that's their best, and it's an incredible record. But then they also, they produced Country House, which is just, I don't know. It's not a song I'd want to put my name to personally, despite getting to number 1. It's just...
Yeah, I know what you mean, but John Lydon used to have his own talk radio show on the early days of the internet, and people would regularly call in or message in taking the piss out of some of his lyrics from Pistols album. He said, look, I was like 20 years old. Someone said, here's a moderate amount of money, make some stuff up. So I did. He said, it was my first shot, my first bolt out of the stables. And I think Blur, and I'll give you a different answer every week, Blur, Country House, I think they were doing what they wanted to do. And at the time, it might seem corny now, and it did then, but it's very bloody strange compared to everything else. You had like, what, Girls Aloud or the Spice Girls or something like that?
Yeah, and when you put it like that, they were young when they did it, but it always just struck me as like being a parody of themselves. These kind of, what I guess the Gallagher brothers would refer to as kind of shandy swilling Southern bumpkins. I suppose maybe embracing it and just taking it to its extreme was actually quite a smart move.
I think the financial rewards at the time were probably quite tempting, but there must be a musical equivalent of. Are you old enough to remember Madonna releasing the Sex book?
No, sadly not.
When I was a teenager, she released this big coffee table book called, I think it was called Sex, and it was on the really highbrow South Bank show or something. Did on the BBC, did a special on it, and they had all these critics, and they were all given a copy of the book. Like, it came out at midnight, and I stayed up to watch it because there was a chance there might be boobs. And they all got handed a copy of the book, and it came in a tinfoil thing, and they all opened it. And they were talking through it in like really sort of philosophical terms. But one of the things that came out, Madonna was basically, look, she was in her 40s, and she's saying, look, I'm doing this now because I'm proud of my body. I don't want this to be something that in years to come I'm going to be ashamed of. I've chosen everything around this. And I think, God knows how I'm equating Madonna in the nip to being like Country House by Blur, but somehow I'm tenuously getting there. Yeah, I don't think they should look back with any shame, but they have done better stuff.
I'd agree. I think that's a nice way of surmising it.
But to your point of, do bands sit around working out a song and then eventually go, do you know what, this is a bit like that, shall we just do a cover? I'm sure that happens a lot. It's only just occurred to me, I still don't understand this songwriting thing with numbers. You know, people go, oh, this song's 2 and then a 3 and a 4 and a 2. What is that?
This is where you're exposing my musical theory. I thought it was almost like sections, like the 1 refers to a section, 2 refers to a section, or it's like the relationship between one chord and another chord. But I don't know what the steps in between are, what that really refers to. I've always said I would be a much better musician if, instead of trial and error, I had just taken the time to learn music theory.
Oh my goodness, I've really tried, because it only occurred to me relatively recently that people don't just guess at songs. I thought they literally went, yep, that's all right. Yeah, that's what scales are for, isn't it? And now I'm in a band where I'm trying to learn scales because it'd be really helpful, because we improvise almost everything. But holy crap, I'm still.
The example you just gave is how I continue to write music, and there is no such thing as the key or the scale of whatever. It's just 5th fret. That's just all you need to know.
One of my bands, we play complex time signatures, and somebody asked me how I cope with it. I was like, I just completely ignore them. Each time, as long as the drummer knows what's going on, each time he hits the kick drum, I play a note. That's it. That's how I deal with it.
The irony isn't lost on me that I was in a sort of progressive rock band for a few years, which did noodle around in odd time signatures, but the other guys kind of knew what they were, and I could just pick them up, And honestly, I think if you're trying to write music in an odd sort of time signature for the purposes of writing in an odd time signature, it's never that interesting. But there are some things you come up with, some ideas that you don't deliberately and consciously think, let's put that in this odd signature. It just sounds better that way, and your mind can process it just as easily as if it was 4/4.
I like that. I like your philosophy. So tell us more about. Oh my goodness, I've lost my notes. Bedhead.
Bedhead. I can't honestly tell you all that much about them. I mean, I was, as ever, trying to refer to the theme with my choice of riff of the week. They are, I guess, what a lot of people refer to as like slowcore. So it's kind of a lot of clean guitars, and not often many of them, just kind of 1 or 2. Really nice bands to actually listen to. They're a bit like the Sea and Cake. If you've ever listened to the Sea and Cake. They're just like another band where I would describe them as like Saturday morning music. Late start, you put this stuff on. There's not going to be any kind of surprises or shifts in dynamics. They're just a really pleasant band. There's nothing wrong with being a really pleasant band either. It's a lot harder than it sounds.
Oh, it certainly is. I was looking at that was from a compilation from like the early 90s. I didn't think it sounded that old.
Yeah, I believe it comes from like an anthology, if that's a correct term, or just a compilation. Yeah, I don't know why I'm overcomplicating it.
That means there was less time between Golden Brown actually being released and them covering it than you and I covering. I have no idea.
There'd be more time between this Bedhead cover and us, right, than there would be between Bedhead covering Golden Brown.
I started doing really bad maths then. I was about to equate it would be like us covering Blur, and then realizing that Country House came out 25 years ago? Longer ago than that? Do you remember it coming out? You're too young for that as well.
Too young for that. I got into Blur because of my friend's older brothers who had Parklife, which should give you an indication of roughly what part of the Blur
where my
chronology I
interest
joined
waned somewhat.
Yeah.
We were just slack-jawed when Parklife came out. We're like, why are they doing like something that sounds like it should be an Oliver or My Fair Lady or something, rather than dreary, miserable Kinks-like stuff, which I preferred vastly. Anyway,
I've always got a soft spot for Bank Holiday, though, off Parklife. That sort of, again,
is that
seems
Parklife?
It's on Parklife, Bank Holiday. It's just like a parody kind of fast punk track, singing about the kind of characteristics of a typical British Bank Holiday. I love that song.
Cool. Right, we ought to move on to my riff of the week, which is a little bit different. I won't ask you to guess who that was because I only found out who they are yesterday. Thanks to the good old tidal algorithm, which is serving me very well at the moment. That's a band called Gatecreeper, and the track is called Dead Star. I chose it because the whole song's pretty good, pretty much like it, but that killer riff comes in. That's the last 20 seconds, basically. And you were talking a minute ago about strange time signatures. That was a strange time signature. But it works. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I just thought I'd go back to basics and just get what I thought was a good riff for Riff of the Week.
Fantastic band name as well.
I've seen a few good names recently. I mentioned before on the podcast I went to go and see Goat Whore, which I think is one of my favourite band names at the moment.
It sounds a bit Nathan Barley, if I'm honest, but I could roll with that.
They were like the nicest band. They were proper singers, like proper what you'd expect from metal. He was like proper gnarly. He must have been 6'6". Looked like. Have you ever been to America?
Yes. Yeah.
American men are different to British men. They're just big. You look at them and go, "That's a man." Whereas we are little. I'm 6 foot, but I'm still like a twiggy child fella compared to Americans. He looks like someone crossed an American with a Finnish giant. He is a big lad, but one of the nicest people. He's like, songs are all starting. He's got names like, I'm not going to make one up. Yeah, well, it's fun. Names like Virgin's Decision or something. The wolf rips the throat or something. And in between songs, he was like making sure everyone in the crowd was okay because the mosh was quite heavy. And this woman pointed out that his flies had come undone. He said, this lady here just pointed out my flies are undone. Thank you very much. And the guitarist went, it looks like you got a date tonight. And he turned to the guitarist and went, no, she was just being polite. And for that, I'm grateful. So he just came across as just wonderful. Like I know like the metal thing took me years to realize the metal thing is a shtick. Yeah, we know that. Anyone who's listening to this who doesn't like metal and is asking themselves whether it's serious or not, the people who do take it serious, we tend to avoid those. The people who know there's an element of humor to it, they tend to be the cool guys.
In my experience, the ones who do take it seriously are the ones actually producing the music. Every metal band I've, encountered has been sound, really cool guys. But it's the fans and the sort of gatekeeping fans, more sort of particularly the ones.
There are a few, but on the whole, metal gigs. I read a quote or saw a quote or read it. I don't know. These things enter my skull through either my eyes or my ears or sometimes my mouth. And it said metal fans are really nice people cosplaying as being dicks, whereas hippies are real dicks cosplaying as being nice people.
I think there's an awful lot of truth to that.
I think there is, because metalheads, first I'll go to metal gigs and I'm wearing a hat today because it's freezing in here, but I have a shock of white hair. I don't wear any clothing that's anything identifies me as anything other than a middle-aged dad, and I stand out like a fucking sore thumb when I go to an extreme metal gig and everyone's got black hair, long hair, jet black. I really look like I'm there to pick up my children, and yet I've never had any grief, never had anything other than people who are lovely and friendly, which is weird at the urinals. I still can't get used to people talking to you at the urinals. I've got to concentrate. So I could just driven myself wildly off track there. Right, let's get on to the theme. We're 15 minutes in. What is the theme this week?
It is songs you wouldn't want to cover, which I thought was great.
Ooh, did you come up with that or me?
You came up with it, and I'm curious to know your kind of attitude towards covers. Are you a fan of them? Do you like them?
They've got to be doing something new. They've got to be taking it somewhere new. There's although that can happen for good and bad reasons. So in the 90s, and probably going back forever, the stock route one for any band assigned to a major was release 2 or 3 singles. If they don't do well, release a cover. The last band I can name who did it was Muse, because they released
Feeling Good.
Feeling Good. Lemonheads did it with Miss Robinson. And though there's an example of people, clearly the label going, look, you need a hit. So they do it, but they do add something to it. They move the story on. I like that. I don't like the pop idol type angle of taking a song and just ripping the soul out of it and going over it a lot. That like horrible vibrato thing that people who think they can sing do. What's your? Do you like a cover?
I'm conflicted. I enjoy being 7 beers deep and hearing a band in a pub play, You Shook Me All Night or whatever. But as someone who produces music, the reason I don't like them, there's 2 reasons. One is I feel like I've failed if I'm playing somebody else's music. And the second thing is that I can't really play like even the most primitive guitarist. I have my own sort of way of doing it. It's quite weird, and I was never taught properly how to play my instrument. So inevitably, I try and learn someone else's song, and I just can't get the pattern or the rhythm down exactly as it should be. I'm not talking like King Crimson. I'm talking probably like a Green Day song. Weirdly, I'm just not equipped to play a guitar like that. So yeah, and the idea of doing like a version like you've described, that would be kind of cool, but I don't know. I'd have to be paid an enormous sum of money to get out of bed in the morning to do it.
I'm like you. I find it tremendously hard trying to learn songs that other people have written. I've got a friend. Hello, Tom Sanderson, if you're listening. He lives in Thurston near Bury. He plays in a function band. Well, and they're good. I mean, they're really good. I've seen them. But the repertoire he has to store in his head, they'll play for 3 hours. I think he said he can proficiently play 400 songs.
Wow.
You just kind of go, what? The band I'm normally in, we play for half an hour, and we're lucky if that's 2 songs.
Yeah.
So I've sort of got admiration for it. When I was a young teenage dickhead, I'd say people in covers bands should give up. There's a universe's sign that your time is over and it's someone else's time to play. But the older I get, I think it's a skill that is perhaps slightly separate to writing just originals, but it is a hell of a skill. And let's face it, I've been in bands where we could play blind drunk and it wouldn't make much difference to the output. If you're playing a function band, you're in trouble if you can't, if you don't play perfectly. So I think I'm rolling you in with this. We've had a lot of leeway over the years from doing originals. We really have.
Oh, 100%. Like what people have described, if they've been flattering about my style or whatever, I'm like, no, this is me trying to sound like a normal guitar player. Whatever you find interesting about it is the kind of, collection of failures and errors and unorthodox approaches that kind of coalescing here. But I agree to your point. Like I've been at weddings and a function band's been on, and as someone in an audience, that's amazing. That's sometimes, what a treat to be able to hear like bands that are no longer together. Actually, what would that sound? What an approximation of what that would sound like that's a treat. But I don't want to do it.
I don't think I probably still wouldn't make an effort to go to it, but there's a couple of exceptions. When there's a tribute band that's a tribute band to something that really takes me by surprise, I'm always interested. We are making a film at the moment, which I don't know if I told you about. Not Beat Motel film, because no one watched that. But we're doing script run-throughs in a pub in Ipswich, and there was a covers band downstairs, and they were an REM covers band, but they appeared to be only covering stuff released before Automatic for the People.
Okay.
And I love that era REM. I was really like, can we hurry up? I want to go and hear all these songs that probably like no one else in the room's going to know, but I'm going to be going, don't go back to Rockville, and Radio Free Europe song and all that brilliant stuff. So that's one type. And then there's another one which chooses a genre and just does it very, 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 very well. In Ipswich, there's a band called JS and the Lockabillys. Have you ever seen them?
No, I'm not familiar with them.
They are a rockabilly band. And holy crap, they are so good. They played, I've known Josh, the singer, for many, 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 many years. He's a superb human being. And they played my brother-in-law's wedding years ago. And they did it as a covers band, but still doing it rockabilly. So they played like your Bon Jovi, all the crowd pleasers, everything like that. Oh, they also played Gareth and Jenny's wedding, my bandmate, doing a similar thing. So all the crowd pleasers for the I don't know, the grannies and the kids, but for all the chin stroking musicians in the room, they did it in a perfect rockabilly style, and they were fucking cool. So
no, I think that sounds wicked. Like that's the sort of spirit in which I can truly appreciate what people are doing in a covers.
I think that because that's got longevity. I'm not such a fan of the LOL covers bands. Like, have we had enough of ukulele covers bands now? Can we move on? Is that done?
Yeah, and there was that awful period where sort of and then they're not post-hardcore bands, but it was like in sort of like late 2000s era where they would kind of put like pop songs and they'd put like breakdowns in them and stuff, and they were just like mocking the song as much as the genres that they both belonged to. It was, I'm glad that's gone.
It's so weird how some of them float to the surface and become mainstream. There's a cover, I was somewhere recently, and it was a friend's mum who's in her late 70s raving about a cover that somebody had done of The Sounds of Silence, a metal band.
Oh yeah, didn't the Disturbed do it?
Disturbed, that's it.
Yeah.
And I thought, how strange that's like floated to the surface. There's certain things I think they've reached saturation when either they become normal in Ipswich, or you hear somebody in their 70s talking about them, or they're played on local radio. And clearly that's what's happened to that band. Right, we ought to have my first. Hang on, I've completely forgotten where we are. Have we had your first choice?
No, we've had the riffs of the week.
Wow, 22 minutes and we've had no choices. Right, here's your first choice for bands you wouldn't want to cover. Oh, I'm really got this wrong. I just tried to date them in my head, but tell us who it is.
It's a band called Polvo, and oh god, you might have to. Is it "Can I Ride"? Is that the name of the track?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to them on repeat, but I don't really pay much attention to the track titles. They will have been 90s, I believe.
Yeah, and I thought they were newer only because that bass sound is a very, very modern bass sound. It really cuts through, and it's really sort of mid rather than thunderous. It sort of took bands. Well, I don't think bands they're still getting bass sounds wrong, but it's a lovely rolling track, and that bass line is just wonderful. But why did you choose Polvo?
Because I've always been interested in like odd music, progressive music. I want to use the word math rock because that's what, if I use that, everyone knows what I mean. But as a fan of those bands, it's just a dirty term, isn't it? But let's just use it. Let's be charitable to people and generous. But this band, I still like get in a mess trying to follow the music, and there's like sort of so it's obviously using odd guitar tunings, but there's even like forums on the internet I found where people are trying to imitate this sound and cover the songs, and they're realizing that despite being in the correct tunings, like they've convinced themselves that Polvo used to rest their guitars up against radiators before recording because it's just slightly out, and people are trying to do that to just get that precise tonal accuracy. So not only are you dealing with kind of weird rhythms, you've also got weird tunings that are kind of not quite right. The pedals are being used in really sort of unusual ways. So to get anywhere close to how they sound would require just a tedious and soul destroying and ultimately passion killing exercise.
It's interesting because on first listen, I wouldn't think they sound difficult. But yeah, as a musician, I can really see that. It's a bit like have you ever tried to cover Minor Threat or even just try to play any of sort of that? I know we're talking about post-hardcore here, but like early hardcore, like Minor Threat, Circle Jerks, anything like that.
You mean sort of fast hardcore?
Fast hardcore, and it's not the speed that makes it difficult. It's the fact that nothing's in fours. So when End Times, one of the times we gave up and decided to do something, we were going to do hardcore. So we spent a couple of practices trying to cover hardcore songs. They are really difficult. And it's not the speed though. It's the doing 2/3 of a chorus and then shifting to something else, or because
it goes against some sort of instinct that you've developed over time.
Oh god, yeah. In one of my very, very old bands in Junk Culture, we used to cover Sweet Jane by Velvet Underground. And that does the same thing. It doesn't work in fours, and the drummer, bless him, just couldn't get it. It just never, ever did. So I think we ended up bastardizing it and making it closer to something that we could actually play. But
that's funny. I've always been in bands where the drummer is not the one. It's the guitar players who have to kind of follow the drummer. So it's kind of like it's the guitar players not getting it, not the drummer who doesn't get it because he's insisting I'm only doing it 3 times, and then I'm going to do it 6 times. Then we'll do it 4.5 times. And if you're failing to follow me, well, it's on you.
See, the drummer that I've played with, Dom, for so many years now, not because there's so few drummers around, to make that clear. We've just been me as a bassist, him and a drummer, we've been a rhythm section for so long now. We're so locked in. But he never ever goes wrong. But he also never tells anyone else they're wrong. It's like the nicest type of drummer.
I mean, that is the ideal drummer. And I mean, there are a surplus of drummers. I still think it's fair to say that they are, especially ones that will reliably show up to practice. If they have a driving license, even better. In my experience, they know their worth, and you will do a lot of chaperoning. In my experience,
I just think as Christmas has just gone, and It's a Wonderful Life, the little girl says, "Every time you hear a bell, an angel's got his wings." And I was thinking, every time you hear a cowbell, a drummer has decided to play. That was funnier.
Very good. Right, no, I thought it was good. That'll go over well over sound.
Let's move on to my first choice. I went for that. It's really obvious why I chose that. I do tend to do obvious choices, but do you want to have a guess at who that was?
I don't even want to have a guess. Is it going to be like because I think you've done this to me? Is it a band you've played me before?
I don't know, but
it's not Russian Circles.
I can see how you'd say that. I can absolutely see how you would say that. It's a band called Elder. And I'm not even sure what genre they are. They sort of probably fall a little bit into metal, fall a little bit into post-rock or post-rock or post-concrete post, anything with a post in it. And I chose them just because that song is called The Fallen Veil. And when I first heard it, it was one of those songs that sometimes the song pops up and I just want to stand up outside of my chair and just go, yes, that riff. Oh my God. Apparently, according to my wife, if I'm at gigs seeing a band I don't know and they do something I like, apparently I nudge her, point at the band and go, that, which I had no idea I did. But that song, it's about 12 minutes long, so it probably is a bit kind of prog. But you're talking about learning songs earlier. And one of the issues I have with learning other people's songs, whenever I've tried and failed to do it, is I look at them and go, why have they made it so complicated? I wouldn't do it that way. Especially the Beatles. Like the Beatles stuff, really early Beatles stuff is Can't Buy Me Love was the first bass line someone taught me. And it's Can't Buy Me Love. Oh God, I hope I don't get a copyright strike for that. We get fucked by the Beatles, whoever.
Yeah, I've heard you mention this on other podcasts, and it doesn't surprise me because they They must be just
them, and AC/DC gets the entire episode cancelled. But the bass line, such a simple sing line, the bass line is dun 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 dun. And I just thought, nah. So I just chose Elder just because all their songs they're unnecessarily complicated, but without being inaccessible. And I think it probably is that complexity that makes them so good. But that riff at the beginning, just listen how far, as a chord progression, it falls and then it falls. And I'm going to play it again just because just listen to how far it falls from where it starts.
Well, that is good. That is very good.
And after this bit, it falls even further, and then it goes into this whole other bit. But God, that is a joy of a song.
But that's enjoyable. That's enjoyable complexity. I think there are many such cases where complexity just completely defeats any joy you might find in the music.
I know. I've seen Opeth live.
Yeah, a band I never got into probably for that. And Tool are a bit similar. There are a few Tool songs I've heard that I enjoy, but overwhelmingly I've been having my ear chewed off by people saying like, oh, but did you know that like this was written like aligned with the Fibonacci sequence? I'm like, fucking what does that matter? Why is that important? How does that improve or inform any kind of meaning?
You know, they say a bad joke is one that you have to explain and give circumstance, or you spend longer explaining than the joke takes to tell.
Yeah.
Maybe it works that way with music. If you have to have somebody sit you down, like Rush are the same. Do you know, sometimes I record these and I already know which clips are going to get me the grief on YouTube. Rush are the same. People go, okay, but what you have to understand is that at the time, like, I've already bored. Yeah. I've already lost interest. If it's good, it's good.
Yeah, it's a bit like when you have someone tell you that, oh, I know that this guy is a bit of a dick, but when you get to know him, he's actually really nice. It's like, well, I'm not going to invest that time
being an apologist. Yeah, and you and I probably both have the same person in mind. And with that, let's move on to what are we on now? Your second choice. Everything that band does. I'm yet to hear anything by this band and think, they're scraping the barrel a bit. Who was that?
That was Godspeed You, Black Emperor with East Hastings.
That's a really curious name for a song, East Hastings. Do you think they've been to Hastings and then been to battle and looked at the whole 1066
right?
thing?
It's a bit of an obscure reference to just pluck out of thin air.
It is, isn't it? So I know why I wouldn't try and cover this band, but why wouldn't you try and cover this band?
Because I just think they're vastly overrated and possibly one of the worst bands to have ever come into existence. I'm joking. I just want to see what reaction that would get.
No, that's great. I've said before, we don't choose the best of what we're talking about. We choose discussion points or points of interest. So that would have been a valid choice.
No, it
I'm
wouldn't
going to clip it at the end of you saying that, and you can get the grief for that clip.
That's brilliant. No, I mean, actually, we're probably at odds at why I wouldn't cover this, and you perhaps would, is simply that I would need to enlist the help of, I think there's, like 50 of them?
Exactly what I was going to say, so I'll let you pull at that thread.
I thought, just from looking at images over the past, because I'll be honest, I listen to a lot of music. I don't really do as much as I used to, like the kind of biographical stuff, which lands me in a lot of bother because I was a big Burzum fan for years until people kind of pointed out I shouldn't well, not that I shouldn't like Burzum, but did I know what, this guy had done? And I was pleasantly naive to it. But I've always assumed there was lots of them. The songs go on a long time, so practice would be quite time consuming. And that's that part as well, that speeds up, and to kind of align with lots of other musicians speeding up at just the right sort of pace could be quite challenging. So yeah, it's more the logistics of getting a band together for this, and just the overwhelming sort of size of the project.
You got an automatic thumbs up thing pop up.
It does that.
Sorry, on the YouTube, that means something on the podcast. I've seen them live. I don't know, a few times, possibly 3. And you're completely right. I would say, right, you can't cover this because you'd need, for one thing, instead of being able to tour in one bus, you probably need 2 just for the amount.
Yep.
You've got 2 bassists and a double bassist, for fuck's sake.
They have 2 bass players.
2 bass players. Well, the 2 times I saw them, I think they're one of those bands like Swans that kind of evolve and they're slightly different each time they tour. But, certainly when I saw them, they had 2 bassists and a double bassist, although it might be one of the bassists was playing double bass for some. But I think they had possibly 4 guitarists and just a whole load of people. I've seen smaller bands in the stands at number of people at football ground. God, that was torturous, wasn't it? But yeah, too many people. You'd have to pay for too many travel lodge rooms, and it would just be unprofitable. That's what happened to the Polyphonic Spree. Do you remember them?
I was actually going to choose the Polyphonic Spree.
Yay! Yeah, good choice. They got dropped at the end because their record label just basically just ended up just going, fuck off, just fuck off.
There was just too many people to pay. Surely.
Too expensive. But then some really good musicians came out of the Polyphonic Spree, like St. Vincent was in the Polyphonic Spree.
I had no idea.
Yeah, she's a win. We couldn't tell because they were wearing the cloaks and
robes,
robes and whatever. I just thought just the laundry for that band. At least Godspeed appear to wear what they want to wear. But yeah, can you imagine sound checking? What's the largest number of people you've had in a band with you?
There was a time when Cassetto had, let me just tally this up, me, Ben, Isaac, Tom, Toby. I'm confident it was probably 5 was my peak. And I'll be honest, as much as I love guitars, and at one point Cassetto, we did have 3 because Toby would do the vocals and he would play guitar parts as well. So there was 3 of us playing guitar. I think if the idea was floated that we would get a 4th guitar player, that might just be when I bring out the loop station and say, like, there's a limit.
There's a band called Blue Aeroplanes that had like 17 guitarists. I'm gonna have to.
How on earth do you align for a band practice when there's 17 of you? I struggle to get 2 people to agree on a date to go down the pub at this point.
Yeah, well, that's why my band, which these are End Times, at one time had 9 people in it, and we're down to 7 now. But that's why we, for a long time, struggled to gig or to do anything at all. But when I started a band called Zeeb many years ago, and the original plan for that, I had 14 bass players and a drummer. Was the original plan for that. And
I'm glad that plan never came to fruition. Like, that's not a good plan.
In the end, only one other bassist turned up, and he just off the top of his head just went, "Oh, I didn't bring my bass because he just spur of the moment."
He thought 13 others would be there, so
yeah,
why did he need
in his head? Yeah, so he brought a guitar, having never been a guitarist, and that band carried on as a 3-piece for years. And I think both us and the world dodged a bullet there. So there you go. Godspeed. Godspeed.
I mean, if you wanted to start a novelty covers band, there's your name.
Oh God, that's a topic. That's a whole other topic. Kind of what do you call your band? Dogspeed. I can't think of a brand of dog, a breed of dog that starts with E. It'd be Dogspeed You Black Labrador. Clearly, that's the obvious.
I mean, I think there's legs to that. Oh, pun unintended.
Right, let's move on to my next choice. This band, I've seen them live, and I find most of what they do unlistenable because to me it sounds like it's out of time. That bit at the end, the blast beat drums, it sounds like it's not in time, and I'm sure I must be wrong, but that's not why I chose them. You might know who this band is. It's not Burzum.
This is a genre that I don't listen to an awful lot of, and I would, if I had to guess, and I'm probably wrong. In fact, I'm 99% sure I'm wrong. I would say it was Pig Destroyer, but I don't think it is.
Pig Destroyer. Just put the name of an animal and something unpleasant happening.
They're just another band of chaos that I associate with this kind of genre.
This is Emperor, who are one of the bigger bands of this type, and I find them challenging. But the reason I chose them as something I wouldn't want to cover is, as much as I struggle to play any kind of riff that somebody else has written, that riff is insane. I'm going to play it again so you can hear the main riff. The do 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 do. It's that you hear it, do, 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 and you're like, fair enough. Then it goes, I don't even know what it does. It just goes.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks now to, I imagine the guitarist writing that first part, which is very nice, and then the drummer or someone going, it'd be really cool if you did this as well. It just made that job 10 times more difficult than it needed to be.
The thing the thing I kind of, when what took the shine off Emperor for me, I should just stop beating around the bush and say it and not be scared, is that when you see them live, they don't do any of that complex stuff. The albums have this fine, like, seam of incredible things. I love that riff. I think it's probably one of the best and weirdest riffs ever. But live, they just don't appear to do it. Certainly not when I saw them. I saw them at Helsinki with 2 L's year before last, and it's one of those things, everyone was really excited and the whole crowd was going nuts. And I spoke to a few people, not many people spoke English. Me and Dr. Sam were the only English people there, and we were like, who are you looking forward to? They were like, Emperor. And I was like, wow, this is going to be so cool. And about half an hour into it, I was like, should we go? No, we did stay to the end, but I don't know. I don't like the fact you have all this complexity, but if you play live, you don't do any of it. Like, why?
I mean, it's much easier to achieve complexity in a studio environment because you can have as many runs at that annoying guitar part as you want. Live, if you haven't quite got a handle on it, it's going to come unstuck pretty quickly. And is there, I remember somewhere, it certainly wasn't Emperor because I'm not overly familiar with them. I know that song, what's that song? Something to do with the wizard. That's probably their hit or whatever. I know that one.
Oh, I didn't tell you the name of the song. That song is called Depraved.
Of course it is. But is there some suggestion, I've heard of other metal bands that they record not quite at halftime, but they do have some engineering that kind of makes it sound as though they're playing faster?
I've done that in the days of 4-track, where we would tune flat, turn the tape, slow the tape down, record, and then speed it all the way up.
So you couldn't play your own songs live at the pace or the tempo that it was recorded at?
No one wanted us to play them at any speed, so it didn't really matter. But no, I don't know. The only reason I'm saying that would be, I'd be fairly shocked. And I've seen live a lot of bands who are fast as fuck. And to me, you get past a certain point, it's just, what's the point? Just don't bother. It just turns into complete muddy nonsense. But that would be the kind of thing, if it came out for definite that a band had very speed recorded, which is what it's called, they would never get a gig anywhere. That in its metal circles, that would just be death. Despite the fact some early, we might call it proto metal, like Led Zeppelin, used very speed recording. So,
interesting.
Well, they did it the other way around. Kind of. They recorded and they slowed the tape down. Robert Plant. Oh God, you can hear this really badly on Houses of the Holy. Robert Plant came in and basically he's doing his vocals while the tape's slowed. So when the tape goes back to standard speed, that's why Houses of the Holy is like, this sounds like Pinky and Perky or one of the Chipmunks or something. He's not singing that high. It's just, very speed. Whoop, sped up like that. But I like your accusation. More accusations, please. Right, your next choice. Who was that?
That was Sparklehorse. And it's just an excuse for me to crowbar Sparklehorse onto Beat Motel Podcast because I don't feel that he and his band get nearly enough attention.
I think I wouldn't want to cover that just because the entire aesthetic, the whole vibe of it is just impossible to replicate.
My thinking was that it also is achingly kind of personal to me. When I listen to any of his music, it just feels like he is singing directly at somebody or about somebody. And I feel like a bit of a like fraud trying to just even use those words. It just feel like a sort of weird ventriloquist act. Do you know what I mean? Like there are songs that you can sing along to because they're just quite broad, sort of, they're not about anyone in particular. They're just kind of sentiments that broadly people share. But like Sparklehorse music, man, it's so like claustrophobic, and I think that speaks to the aesthetic that you're describing. That yeah, if I saw someone get up on a guitar and play this song, I'd just be a bit like,
Like you're not. What was his name? Linkus.
Yes, I can never pronounce. It's Mark, isn't it? Was his first name?
Yeah, you're not Mark Linkus. Just leave it. Don't.
Yeah, exactly. It would just be a bit. I don't know. It was like reading someone's mail or something. I don't know.
No, I know exactly what you mean. It's anything that's that heartfelt. No, leave it to them. Just go and get your own nonsense. Right, we've got to move on to this. Yeah, it causes me almost physical discomfort to have stopped that. Then I can't judge whether you know who that is or not. I think you probably do.
Because for years I deliberately tried to listen to quite obscure music, stuff that like everyone should know about. I don't. It's kind of I've really inadvertently screwed myself.
That's why I didn't listen to this artist. Completely why I didn't.
I'm not a guitar solo guy. I know that's not David Gilmour, so it's not Pink Floyd. Is it Pink Floyd? Are you serious?
No, but when I tell you who it is, there are going to be so many people listening to this who are just going to go,
is it Leonard Skinner?
Fuck, it's Jimi Hendrix.
Is it seriously?
It's Jimi Hendrix.
I should never pick up a guitar again.
It's just there's so much. My reason for like never covering Hendrix, and I don't know if anyone has, is because there's no point. You are never going to be better than Jimi Hendrix. But that song is Axis Boulder's Love. And if you've not heard any Hendrix, that's got the most soulful vocals. His vocals are kind of apologetic, which he didn't consider himself a singer. He basically did it because, I don't know, someone told him he ought to. But the soul in the guitar playing, it's not overly technical. It's just wonderful. So don't cover it because there's no fucking point.
He was the king of covers, man, because there's that story, isn't there, right? Where the day after Sgt. Pepper's came out, he just went and performed that song in front of the Beatles.
When his last performance, Isle of Wight Festival, he's in the first aid tent for quite a while. He sort of goes, right, I've got to have to go on stage, and he goes, how does the British National Anthem go? This is while he's holding a guitar, walking onto the stage. How does the British National Anthem go? And someone goes, duh, duh, and he goes, okay, just goes on and plays it. But man, I
feel awful. If you'd have played Hey Joe, if you'd have played Fire, Voodoo Child, Purple Haze, any of the hits, man. But you've got me there.
It's worth
like fraud.
It's worth. Sorry, again, my daughter is ringing me. Izzy, I'm recording a podcast. I've seen your messages and I'll deal with it as soon as I can. Okay. She's after her allowance.
More Smiths records to pick up, presumably.
I tell you, a few weeks ago, we were like, do you want to come watch a family movie with this? She's like, no, I'm going to go to my bedroom and listen to the Smiths.
Exactly. I remember you saying, and I just thought we'd reverted to the 1980s.
I don't feel sad at all that you didn't know that Hendrix song, because it means you've got so much joy to discover. But Axis Boulder's Love. So
I've heard the name, but
also just
I would be sure to listen to that.
The phase on this. like ascending when the guitar comes. Anyway, we better move on because actually the battery on. I'm using fancy camera in the studio today, and the battery's about to run out. So this is your last choice. Named after a fish, I've just found out. Who was that?
It was Grouper with I'd Rather Be Sleeping. And as your camera is about to die in the interest of time, the reason I wouldn't want to shoot for a cover of this is that I think it's the single most beautiful piece of music I've ever heard. And anything that tried to imitate it would just be like a pale imitation. So I would steal well away from this particular song.
So similar to the Hendrix argument. Just leave it. Just let it be. It's been done. It's been documented. That is the definitive version. I hate to have to rush along, but this is my last choice. Guy with the fly, don't fuck around. Don't fuck around. We don't fuck around. Don't fuck around. Now, who remember? Don't fuck around. Don't fuck around. Don't fuck around with Billy the Mountain. Eddie, are you kidding? Do you want to have a guess?
I have no idea, but I loved every second of that.
That's Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention with a track called Billy the Mountain. And if I tell you, Beat Motel listeners and viewers, we mark down the timestamps for each of the 30, because we can only use 30 seconds, each of the 30-second clips that we use. And the timestamp for this is 23 minutes and 29 seconds.
But didn't Frank Zappa produce so much music, he probably even forgot this. You could cover this and get away with it. As
you could. I just think the amount of effort the song is, that's the very end, because that bit at the end, Eddie, are you kidding? That's the next song. Eddie, are you kidding? I'm not going to sing the whole thing. But just the complexity of it. It's like a rock opera in 23 minutes, and it is batshit crazy. And the effort that they went to, I don't think they ever did a studio recording. That was live. And when you buy the album's called Just Another Band from LA, released in 1972. It shows you how they create the song. But what they show you is people making models of the mountain and other characters in it, like nothing to do with the actual music. But I don't think you'd want to cover it just because it'd be like a life's work. And you wouldn't do it as good as the Mothers of Invention. Yeah, Frank Zappa's interesting, but it was really the Mothers of Invention who are just the engine, the powerhouse of it. So there you go, Billy the Mountain.
Well, we've wrapped it up even inside of an hour, Andrew. I think that's good going.
That's not too bad.
For Beat Motel.
There is, the camera's still on, but I probably shouldn't push my luck, and I need to go and transfer my child's allowance, because I think she is literally still messaging me. What an age we live in. Right, I'm done. Thank you very much, Ollie. I'm going to say goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, goodbye. Thanks for having me.
Listen to Axis Bold as Love. AXIS Bold as Love. It is what? Bye.
Straight off.